All right.
I may just stand. We'll see.
Whatever you want. But honestly, the stool was like
Whoops.
wiggling enough to worry about it.
Okay. I appreciate that. What did I do? Is that what I want to do?
I think you need a screen share first.
Oh, that's right. I'm unfamiliar with this, so you'll have to bear with me. So screen share first. And then choose this, correct? Thank you. And then it's over here. Where do I go? Slideshow. Sorry.
Hey, they get slides with you. With me, they get nothing.
Well, it's for everyone. It's for me. It's a place to kind of check and refresh for later. But this helps to keep me focused, but it's also, I think, a good resource. I tried from last week's. Am I on here enough?
Clap your
Okay.
hands.
Oh.
It'll zero in on you.
Okay.
Don't worry.
After last week's experience and having time to not only process and reflect with you, but myself too, and having the lovely pleasure of being able to watch myself after, I wanted to make tonight more of a balance between what I found to be key aspects in your text, and then to almost, if everyone's willing to be audience members, to be kind of a show and tell experience of what it is that I do, and applying this every day now for 13 years in my position as a middle school counselor. So I really liked that this part of section 2, so the second half of section 2, really aimed in on K through 8, because that is the majority of my professional experience as well. And so just a little note to say, I have several more examples that I could share and provide to you for 9 to 12 as well, but K through 8 was the primary focus of this section. So I wanted to start by having you talk to me, instead of me just starting right away from what I gained in reading this text. So experiential learning is a term that's used quite a bit. And just from our introductions when we first met in week 1, I know a lot of you have experience with teaching. We're all experienced students at this point. And even beyond that, maybe you are a parent, or have nieces and nephews in the school district. What do you know from experiential learning, like as just a community member? What is your take on what that term means in public education? Yes.
Experiential learning to me kind of seems like getting hands-on experience without necessarily having a job. So you're working alongside someone that's more experienced, but yet you're getting that hands-on experience that can't necessarily be learned by a book or a test.
Great. That would be very much how I would describe it as well, just from my personal and professional take of the term. Does anybody else have anything they want to offer? I know we have a lot of teachers tuning in.
I would add to that, I definitely agree that experiential learning is, you learn by doing, literally, but also I think there's a reflective piece as well. So whenever you're experiencing something as a student and you're learning from that, then I think that second step is also reflecting on that experience and, seeing how that applies to you or your practice.
Right. No, I think that's an excellent point to add to that original thought. We're going to get into some detail. That's primarily what this evening will be about. But does anybody have any story or want to share any time that you did have an opportunity to engage in that experiential process and what it means to you still to this day? And if not, that's okay. I just was going to have you share and reflect if you had something that really did have a lasting impact. Again, either as you as a student, maybe as a parent, or you as a teacher, bringing an experiential learning opportunity to your classroom, and then seeing the ways in which students experienced and processed it and carried it with them beyond the classroom.
I know, speaking as I guess I should say previous teacher, because I'm not a teacher anymore, that I probably learned the most by failing like flat on my face as a teacher, especially early on, trying things that in my head or on paper looked fantastic, and just, students just kind of looked at me like I had seven heads, or, there was just this wave of eye rolls or silence. So in terms of experiences, I feel like I've always learned best from trying something that didn't work and then having that opportunity to reflect on it.
Me too. Yes.
I think why I like experiential learning just like as a student perspective is because I'm coming from a math background and I would take a test and they'd be like, okay, no, that's wrong. You can't do anything. And even in this class on how the midterm is going to work, like previously I'd be freaking out. Like I have to make sure everything's ironed out. But this is nice where you can kind of come back, use that reflective piece and say, okay, I tried and I did it, but now what can I do better? How can I improve on it?
Right. And I think a key piece to that is what can I do for me as a continued learner instead of what am I answering for this one person and this one opportunity of being tested. So I think that that's a really big perspective to keep in mind when you're either planning as the educator or learning as the student, looking beyond that grade, which is really, really hard for so many people, myself included, to do. So a few key concepts in introducing the second section of section 2 is really talking about experiential learning and individualized instruction. And it's really the concepts associated are very much in alignment with those ASCA domains that we talked about last week. So the self-concept enhancement, when you're thinking of terms and how you're helping students to enhance their self-concept, think of your role as a counselor within the personal and social domain. So those are some of the activities that happen within the school setting that really help to enhance that student's self-concept, really having them be a part of the decision-making processes for their self and their learning. So experiential service learning, in that aspect, you're going to want to think the career domain. So what projects, can I move this as well?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What projects or social skills development can happen within those learning opportunities of service learning or experiential learning by doing, as we had talked about opening tonight? And then finally, this individualized, differentiated instruction, that'll be discussed in a little more detail. There's one specific researcher that has been noted throughout the text, Tomlinson, that talks about differentiated instruction. And this is going to really address those things that are associated with the academic domain of ASCA. So what are the educational benefits by doing differentiated instruction for each individual student? How does this enhance the overall curriculum that you're bringing forth to the students? And then how does that also bring attention to the support that's needed, again, to address the learning needs of every student before you within a classroom setting? All of those things combined can really impact the attitude that students have towards their career development. These were a few quotes in preparing for tonight that really stood out to me as far as the why behind service learning and why you really want to have that incorporated within your curriculum, whether you're a school counselor, educational professional in that sense, or an educational provider as a teacher or supervisor as a principal, program director, superintendent. That first one really struck me, and I wonder if anyone feels similar in reading those words. An ecological hazard of our youth in schools is that this loss of purpose is experienced. We're turning out a generation of youth desperately searching for meaning in a world of confusing values. And I know even for just myself right now, I guess depending on your role or your interpretation of those words, I think parents could maybe find that a bit offensive. But to me, I think this is even a statement beyond parental involvement. Of course, parents have a huge part in helping children form their own set of values. But what is something that is missing from this statement that I think it's implying is that what are students, especially my students at middle school, what are they constantly influenced by? And I think feeling this internal sense of confusion. Social media for me. Girls are coming to me in particular in tears over the way they look. Already developmentally, we all remember what middle school can do to us, right? And the ways that our bodies are changing at different paces. And then they scroll and they see perfection from all of these people that they look up to and idolize. And they think immediately, what is wrong with me? Why am I not looking this way? Why is it that I'm not living a life in the way that they are? So I think there's a lot of confusing values happening, especially in this K-8 period, specifically in my experience, 6-8, where they need that normal exploratory opportunity to see, from professionals within the building to help them guide paths where they can actually find value in what it is that what they can do based on who they are as individuals. So service learning is a really great opportunity to get them involved personally with great models before them among peers of their same age.
I have a question.
Yes, I was just going to say, please talk as I go.
About the social media. I think a lot of social media influencers are very influential on raising people their own age almost in a way, which is strange. And I don't know, I don't do a lot of work with kids other than, in the gym that I work out at. And they all want to be influencers. It seems like every kid wants to be an influencer. And my first reaction is to roll my eyes, and I'm like, of course. But then I also I engage, as I've educated myself about what it means to be an influencer, and it is an art, it is a craft, it is a job. Do you think there is benefit to them starting to understand, you see the posts, you don't but there's also a lot of work behind this,
Yes.
and almost an early opportunity for them to understand that as a job almost, as far as career counseling. It's well, if we talk about it in career counseling, how they have to understand the requirements of the role.
Mm-hmm.
Bring that into the discussion of, all right, so you want to be an influencer, let's talk about that. If you want to do that, you have to do X, Y, Z. It's not all the fun parts. It's not all about likes and all this. It's about other things.
Yeah, no, I think that's so great. It goes back to the point that I think I mentioned last week, and it all came from Grafton's initial point as far as not wanting to shatter dreams, but to really bring that dose of reality as far as this is everything that's also involved. It's not just this finished product with, the 3 million followers and the $3 million to follow the followers. There's so much more beyond that. And I'm noticing those trends. Whatever is, the hot topic or the thing that's most popular at the time in the last 5 years with social media, that is what students want to do. So it went from wanting to be gamers, professional game reviewers. I know that there's a name for that. I'm sounding old, but so from video gaming to reviewing the games to now this whole social media piece with Instagram primarily, and these students just feeling like that is a very realistic opportunity that they can walk into. So I'm going to show you, we had to, just this last spring, we had to pivot a bit with our career day experience, but we try very much to take the data that we get from their interest inventories and their careers that they save on their individual profiles. We try to look to see if there's a common theme. The ones that are most popular, selected and saved, we try to get people from the community nearby to come in and speak of their journey, not only what they did personally to get there and the decisions that they made, but then the training and the work experience that was required of them to be where they are now in that position. And it's a great example and a perfect segue of you asking that and making that comment, because in my experience, they go from, I want to be an influencer and talking about it, to eyes wide open, taking it all in, because it's somebody besides myself, besides a teacher, besides a parent, it's someone doing the job that they want to do, speaking to them about, yes, it's great, but all of these things getting there were not necessarily all that great. So I think it's a great takeaway, and it's something we try to do each and every year. So I will show you one video. I can show you a couple. If there's any that you want to see, I can show you the options, and it's an aspect of my show and tell for you tonight. Grafton, please chime in too whenever you'd like, as you know. So this is just a nice summary screen, a takeaway for you, benefits to service learning in schools. These are all things that can happen each and every time a service learning opportunity comes before them. So an increased ability to cooperate and advocate for what they want to experience, what they hope to achieve. Being able to feel success collaboratively about what they're able to bring to the learning opportunity for other students, that goes hand in hand with enhancing that sense of self-esteem. And responsibility. They are being asked, what is it that you want to do? How can we get there? What are ways that we're going to respond as things come up? If we encounter any kind of setback or hurdle, how are we going to do this? So some of my, and I say things in quotes because I get very bothered when students are, the disturbed student or the problem-causing student, the student with no friends. Loosely, students can be referred to that as that among educational professionals. It would probably boggle your mind, or maybe not so much because you're all in the counseling profession, how those particular students that are sometimes described in a negative way are the ones that thrive in these situations because they are finally seen, they have a chance to be heard, they're feeling understood by their peers for the first time maybe. And so this is just an awesome opportunity to give them a place where they feel that they fit in, where they're contributing, where they belong. And they're starting to really adjust that value system that maybe they didn't have so much before because they hadn't had the opportunity to feel what it was like to be in alignment with something that felt good to them internally. So I was going to share just a few stories with you of my own lived experiences of service learning initiatives. So I would say maybe we're in year 10. My friend, she's an 8th grade English teacher. Her name is Tiffany Trudgeon. She and I created Care Club back when we were still just the junior high. It's a voluntary opportunity. We have club periods built into our schedule now because we want to encourage more of this service learning type of environment within the school day because we want it to be inclusive for all students that have an interest. So when we do things after school, it already eliminates some people to be able to have that opportunity. So we have time built into the day. And I just gave a few examples here of some activities that the students themselves came up with in collaborating with Tiffany and me on things that they wanted to do. So a lot of them researched on their own or with a partner and came up with ways that we could give back while within school, beyond the walls of the middle school and to people within the community and overseas. This Treats for Troops, I'm not sure if any of you have ever heard of that. It was so super simple and such a great way for students to feel like they were really making a difference. So the students within the Care Club put out donation boxes in homeroom, and the week after Halloween, any students that had leftover candy or candy that they just didn't want, they came, brought it to school, donated it, and the Care Club members followed the guidelines that were put forth by this organization, and we weighed the boxes, put letters in to troops overseas, and sent them Halloween candy thanking them for their service. So super easy, super rewarding, and really was a great collaborative way for students to feel as if they were giving back. Yes?
So we did a lot of this when I was in school too. Honestly, in college, we did a lot of these things too for our major. I just think this is such a good way for students to learn a sense of responsibility and caring for someone other than themselves
Exactly.
as well. And that makes them better citizens and employees in the future. So I think it's important to do that even at a really young age, just to kind of set that groundwork.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Looking beyond themselves, especially we know developmentally, they're at a very self-centered stage, which is natural, but you want to start transitioning to the point where you're looking beyond yourself, your needs, and being somebody who does contribute and gives to other people. So excellent point. I think a lot of these speak for themselves. Angel Giving Tree was another amazing opportunity that went a little beyond the Care Club meeting time. Students that first advocated that they wanted to give back at Christmas time. At the time, this was sponsored by JCPenney's. And we had students go there with a parent or guardian to choose a wish list off the Angel Giving Tree. And then they were able to decide with that person that they selected for help, go and get items to make sure that that angel had their wish list met. And then always wanting to make sure that there's a reflective learning piece to these activities. So students who participated in the angel giving tree, they took time to reflect and journal about the experience, what it was like to see, you know, on the tree, there was a 7-year-old and their Christmas wish list consisted of boots, a winter coat, and new socks. And how that felt for them, someone much, you know, very much in a different place as far as what they were wishing for at the same time of year. Another simple yet very meaningful activity that we got into a yearly pattern of doing was Valentine's Day cards that we would first make within the club, collaboratively, different people with different skills, adding to those cards, and then we would deliver them personally to a local personal care home and spend time with the people living at that facility. And Orphans of the Storm, that was again a little more collaborative beyond the care club, but the empowerment and the sense of agency that students had, and going home, communicating what the need was, helping, you know, establish that working relationship with the parent for a common good, baking or buying something and bringing it in and then selling it, and keeping track of the money within the cafeteria between lunch periods, and then all of those proceeds going to Orphans of the Storm, a local animal shelter outside of the school district. So those are just some experiences that I have had, small scale, again, voluntary based, but really meaningful, and a way to kind of highlight all of those aspects that the book was talking about as far as what can be received in engaging in service learning. Wanted to make sure these points were accessible to you beyond the book. In terms of career aptitude and choice, experiential learning projects help. These are the key words. Students to formulate, understand, rehearse many skills that can become a precursor to a career selection for themselves. This phrase is used quite a bit with career counseling, especially within school settings. I'm currently in an advanced group counseling course, and this phrase comes up a lot as well. So the school environment is a microcosm of the community which the school can be found in. So the school itself is made up of various people, backgrounds, beliefs, different value systems, and what is represented within the school system is also represented within the community at large. So things that can be practiced and found successful and meaningful within the school can also then produce the same results within the community as well. So I do have a few things that I was going to show you as far as start to finish, ways that experiential learning can be planned and brought forth within a middle school setting. So I think I need to stop. And then what I was going to show you first, can I get back to my email? Probably not.
Yeah, hit escape.
Okay.
That'll shrink it.
Okay.
Hit the X.
I think. Tell some stories here, but I don't want to tell too many. Here we go.
And then remember, once you click on one of these, you got to reshare your screen.
Okay. This is super busy, this particular screen, but I was just going to have this up. Do I need to make this bigger? Probably. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's super busy, but this is something that's available on Freeport's website at all times. We, based on regional data that has been collected in the Western PA, as well as the Tri-County region, which we find ourselves in, which is Butler, Armstrong, and Westmoreland counties. We looked at job outlook as far as the demands in the area over the next, I believe it was like a window of 10 years, and started forming a pathways models for students to be familiar with and start considering from 8th grade going into 9th grade. So one of the career classroom lessons that I do in conjunction with our career, it's called Career Pathways course, teacher in 8th grade, we collaborate, we co-teach a lesson on these 4 pathways and what pathways mean. And that really helps to have them start framing their mindset on the direction that they want to go not only in terms of a career choice, but scheduling their courses from 9th grade and beyond. And so we have 4 pathways available within the Freeport School District, and they're wordy, but they're pretty much all inclusive. You can see it's the business, finance, and information technology, engineering sciences, industrial technology, health and human services, and then arts and communications as well. And then within each of those pathways, we have listed course areas that are of significance, as well as jobs that would fall underneath those clusters. So we go into detail about what this means, and we tie it to the information that they have saved to their PA Career Zone portfolio, which I am going to show you that tonight just so you can see. And it might even be something you want to access quickly as you're preparing your presentation with your partner too, because it's kind of like a sneak peek, I guess, not like a quick overview of the assessments that you took, but just adolescent form. So I'll show you what that looks like as well. So students have at least a foundation of understanding with pathways, what those 4 are, that there are 4 to choose from within Freeport School District, and then how that aligns to what it is that they're learning about themselves, their aptitudes, their abilities, their interests. So from there, we do individual sessions with myself or Emily. She's our K-12 college and career readiness counselor. We split with amongst our 2 office hours, and we meet individually with each 8th grade student. We start to talk about what it would be that they would want to see in terms of a experiential learning opportunity. So Emily and I find out what their interests are, and then we make sure at least one of their top 2 choices is where they go for a in-person learning opportunity. So the last time we were available to go, so not this spring, it was spring of, I guess, 2019, we took students to FedEx, a distribution site. We went to Carnegie Mellon School of Drama. We went to Armstrong County Hospital, and I am trying to remember the other place right now as well. We went to FedEx, Carnegie Mellon, Armstrong Hospital. Oh, and we went to the Bank of New York Mellon downtown Pittsburgh. Some of the students that were interested in that trip was the first time they've ever been to the city. So it was just a really unique opportunity for them to, first of all, have some agency over what it is that they're identifying with, where they feel their calling might be, and then to be able to physically step foot into a place, have interaction, have questions that they can ask and have answered by professionals within the field of their interest, and then having that opportunity to come back to the classroom, reflect, and share among peers. So it was very well received by students and family, as well as teachers. We had teachers also come along, chaperone, and watch that experience, one that they were not responsible in carrying out at all, but being able to see what that looked like from their perspective as the classroom teacher, and seeing what kind of learning can transpire from that kind of opportunity. Also, that was the middle school job shadow. I was going to show you if there's permission form for that. We go through this, if you have any specific questions on any of the examples I give, we can always go back in detail. This one, Emily was super proud of, as she should be. Can I screen share? So we have a career day, which is a full instructional day each spring. And again, there's meaning behind the speakers that each student hears from. We do take into account what it is that they're sharing with us, communicating within their classroom lessons, as well as what they're receiving on their interest inventories and just overall their general areas of interest. We make sure that they are experiencing a speaker within each of those areas that they have identified with. We could not do that this year. We were very limited. So Emily used her networking skills and was able to find volunteers in our 4 pathways of speakers that wanted to do a video and participate virtually with our career day this year. So I was going to show you just what some of this looked like. Some are former students. Sydney is a former Freeport student who is now a graphic designer for government nonprofit organization. I have to share this guy with you for a few minutes because he's super entertaining. And we got so much positive feedback regarding Ryan's presentation because he is a sports director. So those students in school that think they're only a professional athlete, that's it. Don't talk to me about anything else. That's my plan A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth. And Alex, I know you had talked about that a little bit before in a previous class period that, you know, acting is the only thing. This was a good opportunity for students to start broadening that perspective, to see that interests can still be met in other ways other than just being in the performance role. So I was going to show you Ryan. What's funny about Ryan, hopefully everyone can see this, but Doug Stanko is one of the high school counselors. So it's funny. He jokes about the unfortunate fact that we know his dad.
Hey there, I'm Ryan Stanko, WJAC TV sports director in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and I may or may not know and or be related to your guidance counselor. All joking aside, what does a sports director do in a small market? We are a small market television station. We're an affiliate of NBC, and our coverage region encompasses 10 different counties in central and western Pennsylvania. Everything from news, sports, and weather, just like your local TV stations in Pittsburgh. That's what we do out here, but we are hyper local, which means we cover more and more of the local scene of things. From a sports perspective, we cover all professional teams in Pittsburgh: Pirates, Steelers, of course, the Penguins. We also have colleges like Penn State and St. Francis that we're responsible for covering sports for, and even small affiliates and branch campuses like the University of Pittsburgh in Johnstown. You may ask, how did I end up being a sports director? Well, I graduated from the Deer Lakes in 2010, went on to Allegheny College in Meadville, spent 4 years there, earned a degree in communication arts, took my first job in Steubenville, Ohio, before finally making it here to Johnstown because the two TV stations that I work for, Steubenville and Johnstown, are owned by the same parent company. Daily tasks and responsibilities as sports director. Well, first, this is our newsroom. This is where we coordinate our coverage and workout. We got computers, editors, anchors. This is where the magic happens. But as a sports director, I'm in charge of formulating all sorts of events, coming up with a list that we can get to each day, and then planning out where we're going to go, how we're going to use our time, and what events we're going to get to. So once we lay out all the events we're going to cover that day, whether it be St. Francis, whether it be Penn State, the Pirates, Penguins, or local high school sports, especially right now, we're in the thick of district basketball playoffs, so that's where a lot of our coverage is at the moment. We plan out what we're going to get to the games, we bring them back, and we start chopping them up to formulate a rundown at night of all the things that we cover, one after the other, and then I get to go downstairs and anchor. And this is where more of the magic happens. This is our multi-studio, state-of-the-art, 4 television cameras, various monitors, a weather center, an anchor desk, and a sports wall at the very end of the studio. The thing that I love the most about this job is the pride you get to take in it. As a sports director and as a sports anchor and television personality, you're responsible for everything in a small market like this. You take the camera out, you go to your game, you shoot your highlights, bring them back, take a tiny card out, put it into the computer where we started this thing. You edit all of your highlights down, you send them to the director, and then you get to anchor at the very end your sportscast. And oh yeah, you're responsible for typing up everything that you want to say and how you want to organize it into these cameras right here with the prompter. So from planning to shooting to editing and eventually writing and then going live on television in front of a real television audience, it starts and ends with you. And that's the great thing about about this job. You get to be independent, and you get to put your own creative stamp on your work each night. For me, why I chose this career is a simple one. I love sports, I love telling stories, I love reading highlights, and I love putting my personal stamp on them. What do I mean by that? No one tells me how to be creative. I get to be my own boss in terms of how creative I want to be. Reading a sportscast, reading highlights, reading anything. That's what's so great about this job. The typical shift for a sports guy is 3 to midnight, 5 days a week. Sometimes weekends, sometimes during the week, sometimes holidays, especially when you get your start in this business, expect to work your holidays. It's how you work your way up. Biggest piece of advice I can give aspiring journalists, people who love telling stories, whether it be news or sports, but especially sports. When you're in middle school and you're in high school, the best thing that you can do, take journalism classes, take writing classes, and even more importantly, if your high school or your college has a TV station, get as involved as you can get with everything, the writing, the traveling, covering various stories. Make yourself as well-rounded as possible. And then at the very end, you get to go on camera, do as many things as you can on camera, report, anchor, read, everything. You gotta be a sponge to make it in this business. Cool fact about the job is actually facts about the job for me. It's all the amazing places and the cool venues I've been in just a few short 8 years that I've been in this business. I've been World Series Game 7 between the Cubs and the Indians back in 2016. Penn State home games, whiteouts against Ohio State, Penguins playoff games, Steeler home games. All that is just part of the job, covering those events. And I look back over all these years, and I think to myself, just how lucky I am to have gone to some of those games, some of those practices, some of the build-ups to those events. And at the end of the day, it's not really work if you love it. My girlfriend Jessica Boy and I started here in Johnstown.
What I also liked, let me see if I can get to it. He's energetic, he's very engaging. He covers all the aspects, not just the fun part, which I think students need to hear, all of it equally. I'm gonna get a degree just in using online tools.
Move that little bar.
Okay, I'll move it up for a minute. What I liked is that this is also what they experienced. I'll just show you a quick clip of this.
Spin cycle lefty off the window.
So-
Then Garrett began the game up 13-6, and they would extend. Garrett Harrowin off the extra pass. They're up by 9, but here comes the Trojans. Isaiah Matula. All right, you're not going to check me. Sticks it from downtown. Matula now. Inside to his man, Josiah White. Taylor who went bonkers tonight. 30-12. Johnstown closed out the first half on a 13-0 run. They win 78-58. The other boys semifinal, Bedford at Bishop. Boys action.
Put this back down. So again, they saw the behind the scenes, they got to hear his journey. They were able to hopefully understand that it was a process. He didn't just get to go to games and do the voiceover start to finish. There's a lot of editing, a lot of writing, a lot of creativity required, a lot of independent motivation. And so students really received his story well. I wanted to show you another one that's short. Is this one. So this is in the engineering sciences and industrial technology. This is Chelsea, who shared her journey as well. She's in the Carpenters Union apprentice video.
My name's Anthropologist. I'm 23 years old from Union City, Pennsylvania. There's 2 hours.
That's not the one. That one's longer. Maybe it's this one.
Hello, my name is Tony Martin, and I have been a professional carpenter for 14 years. My union journey has been rich and diverse and included seeing union carpentry through many different angles and many different lenses. I began my career as an apprentice, looking for a path to a career that offered benefits, great pay, advancement, and personal satisfaction.
Fell for it.
An opportunity to work with my hands and to help build not just buildings, but communities. I worked in the field for several years traveling and installing exterior wall panel systems, which has been both challenging and fulfilling. My apprenticeship training included welding, and that skill alone has helped shape my career. It has been unreal watching buildings go from the footer to finish work, or as carpenters like to say, dirt to dreams. My traveling slowed down when I started my family, but my opportunities did not stop. I was able to work for the same company in their industrial shop, building the same panels I was installing. It was great being able to work close to home. Opportunity presented itself again when a job as an instructor became available. I have been trained to teach first aid, training, healthcare infection control, industrial forklift, and scaffolding. Our craft is always changing, with new technologies and systems being introduced constantly. As such, our training is constantly adapting to meet the needs of our members and our contractor partners alike. The organization gives us ample opportunities to advance by offering journeyman upgrade classes and through a partnership with our local community college for estimation and job supervision, all at little to no cost. Training should never stop, and our goal is to teach the safest, most technologically advanced, productive professionals on the job site.
So I thought it was important that we had some female representation in non-traditionally female careers, and to hear of her journey and the different opportunities that became before her because of her continued on-the-job training and experience that was very family-friendly, as you heard from her, as well as very financially friendly in terms of what she had to pay, which was next to nothing virtually. Because of the on-the-job apprenticeship experience versus the 4-year college and beyond. So just making sure at this stage of career awareness that students are exploring all options that they maybe were not once before aware of prior to these experiences within the school setting. And before the day closed, they are directed to go to PA Career Zone. Emily put this together as a reminder of how to log into their individual profile and do the assignment that was uploaded to document their reflection of the experience that they could save as an artifact, which I told you before is a mandated requirement from the state of Pennsylvania. So different take, but I think was still very meaningful for students this year. So we have to be on our toes and adjusting when things like, pandemics happen. So let me stop this. Does anybody have any comments or questions about that? Or did you see something that was just so riveting that you wanted me to play it in full? Yes.
I just think it's so cool to be able to see these artifacts of how these students got to where they were and to have that forever. It'll be so interesting to see how these types of things change in the future too as technology continues to grow, as new jobs are created. It'll be so cool to see that kind of piece of history.
Right. Did you read the book?
No. Well, yeah. I want you to say no.
You're just like one section to the next, like right there. So good job reading for tonight. You clearly did. No, it's so true. It's so true. And it's so interesting. I talk with, Doug Stanko and Nina Fulton are at our high school. And I think that that's maybe one of the most meaningful experiences for them is when they're meeting with students each year and coming up with their development plan, watching how much students do enjoy, seeing how far they've come. When you're living your same life day after day, it might not seem like you are going through that much change, but when you have an opportunity to reflect back and see what it is that you once saved and where you are now, sometimes the change can be significant based on experiences.
Share your screen to the
Okay, thank
PowerPoint
you.
if you're jumping to that.
Okay, yes,
About your field trips that you took the students on.
yes.
Did you take all of your students to each place, or did they just get to pick?
So they got to pick. They were involved in the decision-making process. They could choose their top 2 out of the 4. I tried to do that individually. You know, you get wiser in your years. So when we would do it collectively within the group and you get the kids saying, pick number 1, you know, you start to find that there's a theme on who's signing up for number 1 where they don't even know what number 1 is. So making sure that they have that one-on-one time and having them communicate the why behind their choice helps to enhance that communication skill too. So just one trip.
So I was wondering if, like, you know, you had a student that thought they had this interest and they ended up on this field trip and they totally changed their mind. I just wondered if that ever happened.
That has
Sure it
happened.
does, yeah.
Yeah, that has happened. Or some students so upset that they got, you know, their second choice, so bummed out about it, and then coming back, we're so thankful that happened. Or ones that were so set. I'm only going to the hospital. I'm only seeing that. I only want to be a nurse anesthetist, or I only want to do, pediatric surgery. And then they come back and they think, well, I had no idea I was going to be that involved or that much, or so many other aspects of the jobs, because they do. Allegheny General has been another hospital that we have partnered with. So Armstrong Hospital, and then as well as Allegheny General. And they are so great about inviting community learners in, and they take them throughout each station and really open their eyes to more than just medical positions as well. The one time they had, you know, obviously pre-COVID, they had students walk through even the cafeteria, and they met and spoke with the director of food service, and they got cookies, and they just thought it was so awesome that you could be a chef in a hospital. They hadn't thought about that. So just all of those opportunities that really become before them, because they have only their perceptions of what they know, which is why we're called to do these different types of creative learning lessons for them. What else? Yeah, let me make sure.
Have you ever had some of these kids come in from people, homes that have defined gender roles, and then go out to do these things and find out, oh, I don't have to be this way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's another, like, you can fit, like, almost a physically observable learning moment for them. That they almost, you know, I don't know if I would call it empowerment, but just this sense of awakening that this is yet another path that I could consider. What's safe about my position is that it is middle school, and so they're not, like, you know, signing any dotted line of making a committed choice to a career. So there's not a lot of hard feelings either way, you know, from students or families. It's just exploratory. You know, sometimes there have been conversations like, that's not for my child, and I just try to kind of, you know, come back with, well, we're just exploring at this point. It's just about awareness, just making sure that they can understand what they want, as much as they also need to start taking things off of that list. You need to also know what you don't want to do. Having limitless options is not, that's not reassuring, you know, to people. You can do anything, you know, you do anything that you set your mind to. Those are all very aspirational thoughts, but when it comes down to making a decision, sometimes that line of thinking is not very helpful, because it can really cause students that are inclined to be anxious be even more anxious. Well, I just need someone to tell me what to do, is sometimes what I hear. I just want someone to tell me what I'm good at, and I'll do that. So just learning themselves in the process. I don't want to bore entirely. Any stories that are coming to mind just yet, Dr. Alison? Have you seen this position grow into something new, even from the time that you were a practicing school counselor? Just changing its form.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I hear from a lot of students who get jobs as school counselors, and they just don't have time to do these creative things
Yes.
with the students.
Yes.
And that's the biggest complaint that I hear, that they want to counsel more, they want to do these kind of learning experiences. And because there's so few camp counselors, because of, you know, cutting the numbers,
Mhm.
they have so many students. But, you know, if you're able to, if you're in a position where you have the time to do these things, that's what a counselor should be doing.
Right. Well, I am never too proud. I will say that this did not happen when there wasn't that other counselor. And you talked about going to the school board member or the membership and talking about, you know, all the things that came from your group counseling and your positive outcomes as a result of your efforts. And prior to Emily's position, this could not have been possible, or it would have really been very hard to make possible, and not to the degree that it is. So having the manpower, the person power behind these initiatives is essential. So this looks great and it is great and it's great for kids, but it's not practical to think that it can happen everywhere in the same manner unless you have the people behind it.
If school districts could see a presentation like this, it might be like, oh, yeah, maybe we do need another school counselor. We could offer so much more, you
Right.
know?
Right. Because, and that leads into my experience in putting together this information in the next section. When you talk about experiential learning within the classrooms, and so that comes in the form of STEM, you know, this section led towards like, how do you create experiential learning? And it talked about it in 2 steps. And really getting to know the learner as an individual, recognizing their strengths, their readiness, and their learning profile. So not just are they an auditory learner, but what are the ways in which they learn globally? When you start talking, like, and I know we have teachers here, and here, when you start talking as a non-teacher to teachers about, well, you need to know each student individually and then plan each lesson around all of the needs and strengths, then that is when you start to get that disconnect. There's some resentment. There's some roadblocks put up because, and I understand the perception is you're asking me to do another thing. And the comeback typically is, well, this is the thing. This is how you learn. This is how you integrate. And it's compromise on both sides. So I think the book does a really good job of highlighting the things that need to be considered. But in my experience, none of this can be done in silos. Everything needs to be collaborative and realistic in the approach. So to know every single learner and to adjust your delivery, your teaching delivery based on each learner is really a great concept, but is it one that can happen all the time with every classroom? Not so much. These are all important aspects to keep in mind though when preparing for experiential learning. Let me get back down to, so step 1 is knowing the learner, and then step 2, responding to the experiential learner. Tomlinson, as I mentioned earlier, she is pretty much the standard as far as differentiated instruction. So she really focuses on terms, universal terms that everybody within an approach can understand and relate to. She says the focus should be on the content, the process of delivering that content and receiving that content, and then really looking at the data piece at the end, the product that is produced as a result of the experience. Simple enough in theory, a little bit more challenging to put into practice, but I think when the foundation is built on those understandings, so the content, process, and product, it seems to be a little bit less threatening and more realistic as far as shifting your approach to education. And again, direct correlation between or to the academic standards. So sure, students' interests and learning profile are considered or at the forefront, but the standards are still the standard on what the content is meant to address. So why the process and product? So once the teacher defines the content based on the standard or the unit of study, then the focus becomes the process. So how are students going to be able to apply and make connections between the real world things that they're, either observing through some of these guest speakers or these experiences, and what it is that's being brought to them within the classroom lecture, making that connection. So not school being school and then careers being outside of school, not even within the building, but just within a different stage of their life, making that connection so that what we're doing here matters, and this is why. So these are just key takeaways of experiential learning. It has evolved since the early 1900s. It is an authentic learning platform, and it does do a combination of, involving content, meaningful instruction, and community service as a result of this type of learning. Understanding the needs of the students is essential for planning purposes and to qualify the end result, the product. It does mandate a sense of awareness that typical instruction does not require. So constantly being willing to change and adapt as needed based on your learners' needs. Any comments from especially my teachers on this type of thinking within the classroom? And you can share honestly.
Yeah, like what are the struggles? What do you want to do, but
right,
maybe you're having problems with?
I think as a teacher, sometimes it's hard with what, I hate to say this, but with what administration expects you to do and what you really want to do and what you feel the students need. And then it's just like, well, how am I supposed to do that in one day? And I think that's kind of broad, but.
No, it's not broad.
It's a struggle.
And it's a daily struggle, right? Because every day is different.
And then it's like, as a special ed teacher, sometimes I feel like, yes, all of my students qualify for special education, but they're also so varied in what they need. It's just a struggle.
So when you hear the term differentiated instruction, what does that do to you internally?
Well, in my head, I'm like, well, that's what I do. But at the same time, it's like, well, I feel like no matter what, I still feel like I can do it better. I just sometimes don't have to get there.
That's an interesting take. I can relate to that as well. With walking into a classroom and having differentiated instruction at the forefront of my mind, like I'm going to make sure that I assess, at least generally, where every student is, like their readiness. Not everyone can jump into this reflective piece. We need to get there first. You can very much, I can very much leave feeling exhausted and, less than as far as what my goals were and where I felt I ended, because the needs are very vast at times. And that's on a career lesson.
Right. And I hate to put special ed in the
No.
box, but once you add in the behaviors
Yes.
and those things, it's like, okay, now how am I supposed to do this?
Right.
So.
Yeah, because the learning, the meaningful learning is really hard to get to if the behaviors are present. Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. And I never want to sound as if this is easy, just do it, because I was never a teacher. I try very much to empathize as much as possible, but I can only imagine what it sounds like hearing some things, because counselors tend to make everything warm and fuzzy, and this is great, we're going to be great at this. And you need that realistic awakening sometimes and having collaborative conversations.
And I'm very open-minded, I would love to do this stuff, but sometimes I just need the support of how to make it happen.
Yes. You're going to say something too.
Yeah, I think, even with the differentiated instruction, it's very difficult now, even with COVID. It's
Yes.
now frustrating. You're I'm looking at two different areas.
Yeah.
Right.
It's you're, all right, you already feel almost overwhelmed in the physical classroom, and now you have to
Yes.
analyze and help students that way too. So it's awesome that you had somebody else to kind of help you to be able to do this online kind of career fair. I wish I would have had it this whole stuff.
Me too. Me too.
When I look at the technological advances, I think about overview.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody maybe in their 40s, 50s, or even 60s or 50s, they're having to change careers sometimes.
Right.
And so they might be not used to some current technology because they left a job where it was at one.
Right.
And so they're having to learn how to do something else.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You actually just made me think of my dad.
So you're going to have somebody have patience with them.
Right.
To teach them how to do this stuff.
Right, right. The timing of those advances with technology as well as one's own career path is really significant. My dad was always a regional manager, or no, just a single restaurant manager for Red Lobster my whole life growing up. Worked crazy hours, but just managed one place. And you kind of get to a peak where there's nowhere left to go. So you branch out. He became a district manager and then a regional manager, but that meant travel. That meant a laptop. That meant his fingers that are so big having to fit on tiny keys, and his method of typing in a car was just not very efficient. He had no pleasure in work anymore. So I try to sometimes share that story with students that, you know, more responsibility, perhaps more money financially may be really appealing, but you have to weigh out everything that that means and everything that goes with it. So he did retire shortly after that. Couldn't quite handle all the change.
You had to get some good food out of that.
So much good food. Yeah.
I'll never eat Red Lobster again after all that. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah. He was never around for a holiday, but man, those biscuits. Oh, yes. Yes.
I had a very quick question just from your experience, because you said you worked a lot, even like with middle school, with that
Yes.
6th to 8th grade. And I know I see this, I've seen it at the high school a lot. We have a lot of students that come through that like their executive function skills are really, really low. And so I didn't know, like at your specific school district, does the guidance department kind of work with that? Do you integrate any type of, programming, or is that something that's kind of like, well, we just kind of work with students as needed, as that comes along?
So do you mean in doing like the online assessments or the online experience of listening and then, asking for them to do the response like by typing? Do you mean those kinds of things?
Sure. Or even just kind of their planning, their working memory, their organizing, just, especially in that middle school, I feel like that's probably really important, to be able to start thinking about careers, realistically.
Yeah, that's a great example of that differentiated piece. I do try as much as I can to kind of have a pre-conference with each classroom teacher when I'm going in. So a lot of times it'll be the social studies teacher. I have a good working relationship. We're in a building small enough where there's one teacher per grade level for each social studies level. So I tried to have either like a day or just a time set up prior to me coming in on students that I need to be mindful of as far as what their needs will be from me, what I'll need to adjust, trying to make sure that there's no feeling of being singled out or any kind of embarrassment because I'm not aware of their learning needs. But that certainly adds another element to the planning. Sometimes they'll get through as much as possible at the level that I'm presenting, but then a follow-up session will be individual or in a small group. Because sometimes if it's too fast-paced or I'm trying to get too much in the 43 minutes that I have that day, they'll be lost. I'm going too quick. They're, click here, 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 and they're just, like you said, just not at that speed or at that pace. And I just try to make sure that they understand that's okay. We'll get to it. But just making sure that that doesn't become the focus for them, and that knowing we'll get to it, at a level that is more meaningful. But that's a great point, especially when I am trying to get through, making sure those artifacts are saved. I have 26 of you right now. I got to get this done. And then that's when the focus is derailed just because of, these standards we're meeting. The focus is no longer on the learner. It's on the product, for my sake, not for them. So it's time out, addressing their need and reevaluating and shifting once again. But that's an excellent point.
Yeah, I can share my experience with that. So first of all, with differentiated learning, when the students here take lifespan, you're going to learn two theories, Bronfenbrenner and Vygotsky. And the main part of their theory is all about scaffolding, which teachers have already learned about. But it works in counseling too. Scaffolding is directly related to self-esteem and self-efficacy. So we can't give a student self-esteem. They have to it has to be internally driven. So scaffolding is kind of like, I'm going to give a student this task. I'm not going to make it so hard that they're going to fail, but it has to be hard enough that they have to work hard in order to accomplish it. That way they get an internal sense of satisfaction, which leads to motivation. And that gives them self-esteem and a job well done, which is internally motivated rather than like reward motivated.
Mm-hmm.
And, but that takes individual, design, which is a little difficult. But to Jess's question, this is what all the teachers, this goes along with study skills, classroom organization, attention, all of those things. And so the one thing I learned when teachers would refer students to me is that they were not taught the concept of scheduling or rituals or things like that at home from a very young age. There's no ritual or schedule or predetermined plan in their home life. So they might not eat together. So they're all there's food there, but they're all I'm going to eat now, I'm going to eat in front of the television, I'm going to eat in front of the computer. There's no special time. There's no, okay, now we're going to sit down and do homework until it's done. Let me help you out with that. So there's no internal frame of reference for personal scheduling. So not only do they not understand other people scheduling things for them, but they certainly can't make a schedule for themselves and stick to it. So what that means is that they have an internal cognitive map that is not meant for, predetermined scheduling. So their lives seem a bit chaotic, disjointed, non-focused, lack of attention to a single task. So what we actually have to do is start very small with something that they are motivated to do and to break it down into individual segments. And then they need to schedule those segments so that they can accomplish that task, which involves multiple segments and time structures and days. But when they accomplish it, because it's something they're motivated to do, they'll be really happy about it, okay? And that begins that cognitive restructuring. But it takes a year of work, which is a lot. So then you make a group and you design cognitive restructuring processes so that they will understand task-oriented long-term projects, but they'll be motivated to do it over a long period of time and motivated internally rather than me having to say, hey, did you do that yet? Did you guys make your video yet? No, I don't even need to say that. You love this. You're internally motivated. Anyway.
That was
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That's what I was kind of thinking. Like, I know as a teacher, there have been times where I've had kids that will, I'll ask them where an assignment is, and I literally saw that they had it the day before, and then they'll open up their book bag, and there's 25 million different things. And so we'll start color coordinating their notebooks with their folders and just things like that. I'm like, where, isn't this something you should have learned, in elementary school? And it's like, I was just wondering if there is an aspect of guidance counseling that kind of addresses that in terms of preparing students whose home lives are probably chaotic and they don't have that kind of structure like Grafton said.
Yeah, no,
and they might be happy lives.
Right.
They're just not structured.
Right. And then the expectations that are being asked of them all day long in school, they're constantly having that disappointment because they don't know it. And I think everything that he just said is It makes total sense. I thought of a million examples in my own mind as he was talking of when that happens. And that was going to be a story I talked about here in a little bit. So much of the time with those students that are falling behind, aren't following directions, you know, as I put in quotes, are a classroom disruptive type of student. When we meet as, you know, the professionals, the student's not at the table. And so I think that's the big piece, that they're not called in to the conversation about themselves and what it is that they need, what it is that they're experiencing, and how that can be adjusted. It's so much of the planning is happening outside of the student that's in question. So I think that that's what came to mind as Grafton was talking as well, which is a huge shift that's currently being made slowly, but surely, is inviting the student in to have that sense of agency and that internal drive to do what they feel they want to do and can do, with the support of everyone that's there. It's great that the support is there, but the person missing is the key ingredient to the discussion to be actual productive in the desirable way.
Yeah, and young kids end up with a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Older kids end up with a failing grade.
Mm-hmm. When I am in IEP meetings, I know we've special ed teacher who knows those way, way too well. And at 14, that was a section of this book when they're invited to their transition planning meeting. Sometimes it's students' first time that they even understand that there's a plan that's been written about them. It's sometimes the first time that they've seen goals that have been written for them. They had no idea that there was something about them that caused them to have that legal document in place. That's not always the case, but sometimes. That's the first time that they know that they have anything happening for them in the school. You've had that encounter? Yeah.
And I've only ever had, I find this to be an issue counselor in one of my meetings, because that was the only gen ed teacher I had because they had them for an elective. And I just feel like the counselor could be so beneficial. Maybe not for every student, but
Right.
some.
Right.
I'm glad that you picked them, but
I have. And it's been a shift again, you know, all these things, 339 plan, these career initiatives, the personal social pieces, the small groups. There's only so much time, but if it's planned with collaboration and intent. So if you have a student that you know that I see, and you know that what I could provide to the parents and to the specialists that are there would be helpful, then you schedule that. You know, I think in my district is guilty of it. We used to be all or none. I used to spend days on end in IEP meetings because it was just that time of year. We had transition meetings, 5th to 6th, they're going to a new building, 7 to 8 within the building. This was at the junior high, and then 8 to 9. And every student that had an IEP or a GIEP, a gifted individual, I participated in. There were times I said nothing, but yet I was there. So just being really mindful and aware of when presence is good, when it's beneficial, when it's just you're there because then you can sign and show that you were there. So just really being more aware and better and using that calendar and making sure that time is well spent for the student. The second half of the second section really just talks about this concept of STEM. And I'm sure by this point in your own education, you have at least heard of the term before, and how that relates to technology. I do like that the book talked about Mr. Rogers and how even for 45 years, you know, he really introduced children to activities through the use of technology at that time. And his focus was helping helping children to value work, and know that things are made through a process, and that the focus with his videos, if you think back to the feel good feelings of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood and watching his day unfold, he focused on the people and how the people made the difference in the careers, what they liked about their job, how their presence in that job that he was focusing on, how the people behind the machinery or behind whatever it is that he was showing, the people are who mattered. And I can remember watching that anytime I could, just learning so much from just that technology that was available at the time. And so I did bring another question to the forefront here. If anybody wants to highlight, I already emphasized this a little bit, or I guess alluded to this a little bit ago with technology and where students are. But technology certainly has its pros, its strengths. But are you aware of anything to be mindful of with career development and technology, and maybe cons that could be tied to it? And there's no specific answer here. I just wonder if anybody has any hesitations on using technology as the main mode in career counseling within schools.
I mean, there's some interesting things like with technology, we're going to talk about it, but I mean, there are a lot of limitations. Some large segments of our nation don't even have internet.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But just like in like the videos the students are doing, I think it's important. They're using technology to take all the assessments, but it's important for a human being to talk with them and process it with them. So I think it's that combination that's really ideal.
I think so too. And I am finding myself now more than ever, our paths are aligned, but kind of opposite, whereas our strengths as adults tend to be in communication skills, the soft skills of eye contact and, waiting your turn to speak and pausing and giving that space for someone to respond. And technologically speaking, I do okay, but the students before me, who are clearly much younger, are much more skilled and advanced in that area. Whereas to have them give eye contact, to be, calm, present within the moment and not thinking ahead of what their next response is going to be, it's interesting to have that encounter with students, because I think having these tools makes life easier and it is engaging. They are very inquisitive and they are so proficient in navigating through these systems. Whereas when we go through a shift, we were at career cruising, now we're doing PA career zone. They are more knowledgeable than I am when we first get the new software. But it's making sure that, we build on each other's strengths. Because that soft skills piece of having a human conversation is so essential for them going into the workforce.
Can I add just a little to that also?
Yes, please.
Going off of what Grafton said, he said it before I could speak, but I think recognizing the inequity and like access to resources, not only I think individually, but different school districts and certain types of areas. I know like Cal U is in a more rural area, and I think for my perspective, I always think of like culturally different types of even like lower socioeconomic areas that may not have, maybe they have a phone and they know how to use apps and phones, but what is the home life like to, help with that capacity to learn some of these technological pieces and how, I through this whole thing of what you're talking about, I recognize like how, not to use this word in a weird way, but like how blessed your school district is to be able to offer this to your students, and how that is not true for every individual. So I always go to that mindset.
I appreciate that. I try as well. But it's moments like this where you do need to pause and reflect, and I don't think it's a strange word for you to use. It is. We are very fortunate. We are blessed to be able to offer what we do to our students. But I think it's essential for us to not be blinded by the fact that this is not always the norm. It becomes the norm, and it feels like it's just what everyone does whenever you yourself as a district and then the ones around you do too. But just really starting to think globally in the way that we ask our students to, and understand that this is not the case for everyone. I think that is so important. This is the new career portfolio platform that we now use. I spoke a little bit about this last week, but didn't really highlight any of it. And this is what I thought would be interesting for you to kind of maybe experience as an adult learner. This is the free version. We do have a subscription. So more of what we just were talking about. We have a subscription so that students can have their individualized plans saved, and it carries over from year to year. But this is accessible to anyone if they want to explore it. It's aligned with the PA Career and Work Standards. So we went from a national organization, which was Career Cruising. It was helpful to us. It was user-friendly and pretty intuitive, but this is specific to what it is that we're trying to make sure we address within the state of Pennsylvania. It's been a little while since I've accessed this myself because we were in survival mode. The second half of the year, I wasn't in to do career lessons. But what I thought was interesting, this really aligns to what it was that you were asked to do for this assignment. So this quick assessment, the title is pretty self-explanatory. This is super quick. So a lesson could be around talking about each of these letters in detail to students and to the classroom teacher, really saying what this word is, what it could mean. But does anybody in here, because you already did these assessments, does anybody want to share with me what it was that you were in the order that you were? Does anybody know?
Or what theory is that?
Or what theory
is it?
Yay, Holland. I just wanted to see if anyone knew, I could show you what comes up from just plugging these in, and you could see if some of the careers are similar to the ones that you also did in doing the full Holland assessment. Does anybody know?
I'm investigative.
You are I, and then?
And artistic, and not social R.
Really?
I know, right? Who would have thought? I'm a social guy.
Yes, you are. So once you choose, it gives you 10 careers, but I love this. So you can, another lesson is describing the zones, which are ways to talk about clusters. The salary you can adjust. You can only choose to see videos that are have a video to watch. So if you don't want to read, or if you want them to watch a video, you can have them check this. You can have only careers in certain pathways.
Yeah, so let's pick one.
Okay. Well, here are the ones that you got based on no filters.
Okay.
This is a high priority occupation. And if you want to elect that, or a STEM related occupation. Do you want to see what you got without the filters?
Now let's look at what they found for me.
Okay. An anthropologist,
Oh,
astronomer.
I always wanted to be an anthropologist.
Oh, you only got 5. I wonder why.
Because the realistic doesn't normally fit with those others do. It usually goes social. Yeah.
Well, this one might be the way to go though, because of the little icons that are associated.
They're both associated with it, but I started out in pharmacy and hated it, so.
So it knows to at least put that for number 3.
Then we get to watch the anthropology.
You want to watch that one?
Of course.
They keep it short. They keep it short and sweet. Come on.
It's okay if it doesn't cut.
It should. What did it say to me? Maybe if I click it first. So it gives you the average salary, annual openings, and I love how they remind you in Pennsylvania, you can get more information on the preparation, but a description of the job, what it is that they do. The
Can you pick a
interest.
different, this is Pennsylvania Career, so you probably can't pick a
No.
different state. Yeah.
No, the different names that it's called, things they'll be able to do, industries employing. So in my opinion, or I guess in my experience, this really needs differentiated. This really needs to be broken down. They look at this, we look at this as adults and think there is so much information, and I would take a lot of time myself in looking at this. I get a lot of, okay, or is that good, Mrs. Dorogi? It's just like 71,000, great. And I will joke and say it's more than I make, and they love it. So they think that's funny.
Go down and pick cultural anthropology on the right.
This?
Cultural.
Oh, cultural. Ooh.
There you go.
One
Only
institution.
one. Where do they offer that?
Let's see. Arcadia University.
Arcadia.
We'll send you over there. You can go get your new degree.
What's
Annual job
what are the
openings.
completions? What does that mean?
What does that mean? Institution offering completions. Let me see. I don't know what that means.
That's okay.
What does it mean? No one ever finishes the degree. Maybe that's what that means. Only 3 people who've ever started it finished.
The design layout looks really like pleasing, and I can see how maybe like K through 12 would find this interesting, like the graphics and everything.
Yes, they do. I will say that the adjustment to this new platform was pretty seamless. It's not as busy. I liked career cruising, but this is more simplistic. You can do more once you have the paid version, but this can be fun. This is interactive. What I also wanted to show you, and I didn't realize you had to be in a paid subscription. So this is for middle area development. There also is, let me go back to the main page. The elementary counselors use Up the Ladder. And so many of these profilers and inventories are in game format. So there's a lot of engagement with the students that they see it as fun. There's nothing better than walking into a classroom and students being like, yes, the counselor's here. Doesn't always happen for me, but when you're an elementary counselor, that can happen for you each and every time pretty much. But this is a cool program. You might want to look at it, see if you get any additional angles for yourself or for your partner. But it's a program that we do use, and it does keep the profile together with the artifacts.
Yeah, I still have all my class videos on VHS tape. So it is like walking in a classroom when I'm wheeling in the TV and the VCR, and all the students are like, yes, video with Grafton.
Yes, it is.
It's like the old film strips.
Yes, picking the volunteer to turn it back when they hear the beep. Okay, stop.
I have a question. It's like when you have kids, but this could be related to anybody taking an assessment. Sometimes there's a inclination to answer the question as the person you would like to be versus who you are. And I could see, ideally, as you grow older and you self-actualize, those become closer together. But with kids, they could really want to be outgoing and creative, but realistically in their day-to-day life, they're maybe more introverted. So how do you communicate to them that kind of like?
That's a great question. I really try to answer your first response to this too. When you're asked a question, try not to put too much thought into it. See what comes naturally to you. I get a lot at the end of students being like, oh, I didn't get anything that I wanted. And we'll talk about that. Well, what questions do you think you answered that got you to where you are now? And going back to that. And sometimes maybe they don't like the job as far as it's described, but then we look at the aspects of what that job was and why they were given that job perhaps. So we'll look at questions and they'll say, one that comes up, and I've had so many conversations over this. One is a garbage collector, right? One of the jobs that comes up is a garbage collector. And when you have a student in 8th grade seeing that was like a top choice, they're just like embarrassed, but call attention to it, just to kind of make up for the fact that they're embarrassed. And so we talk about, after the laughs, oh, you're going to be a garbage collector. Like, what's the why behind that? Why do you think that was matched? And they talk about wanting to work early hours, or to not be stuck in an office, to work outdoors, to travel, to have, I'm trying to think of other things that have definitely come up, but aspects of the job, so not the job itself, and just looking at that as this is where we are right now in your stage of exploration. Aspects to consider, maybe not the job title that you're going to hold on to forever.
The better question would be, what's wrong with that job?
That too. Well, that too.
That's a great job.
Yes, it is a great job.
You get first pick of all the great old furniture that people are throwing out.
It's true.
I have to drive around at midnight just to pick it up.
I know. Yeah, we do.
Alex, ask that same question in the diagnosis class. Because imagine somebody taking the MMPI too. You know, I do hear voices, but I think I should answer no.
Oh,
I'll keep that in mind. I will remember it.
do you have that class right now?
No, I think next semester.
I was gonna say, what a fun-filled summer for you.
My stories are better for that class, though. Much more entertaining.
Oh my. Okay. Do we need any more show and tell things? Let's see what else I have. If I could just learn this screen, let me tell you. All right, so I won't talk so much about STEM. I was going to show you, okay. One other thing that counselors and I did along with administration. I'm not going to go over this. Do not look at the 20 and get really frustrated with me. This is just going to be something that I scroll through here. We were asked to give the why to teachers on the STEM movement for our district. So why this was going to become not a focus, but the way, in which subject area teachers were going to be called upon to collaborate, share, work together. The book really talks a lot about teaching from a silo. So math teachers are more concerned without the STEM mindset, more concerned with this content, this mastery for this unit, and more of how can we collaborate with the industrial technology teacher. What could this look like in a project with the art teacher and doing spatial reasoning? So that again is very realistic or unrealistic in some aspects, sounds really great, sounds very, altruistic and just like actualizing. But when it comes down to it, how are we going to do this? Where is the time going to be found so this kind of planning can happen? So we were called to put together just some information and to show regional areas in action with what they were trying to do and bringing STEM to life within their school districts. So this is our instructional coordinator here. She is amazing. She is a lot of the reason why Stacy Eisenberg is just phenomenal at her job. So she's our tech coordinator, our tech coach, is just such a visionary as far as STEM education. And so she finds a lot of these opportunities, hand selects in a very crafty way teachers that also should be brought into this experience so they can understand what it is that employers need from students beyond our classroom. So we are to be preparing students for work, for careers, for employment. So it probably would be helpful to know what those employers are looking for. So these opportunities have really started to flourish and to become more and more available. So there is that connection instead of that disconnect between teacher standards and the workforce standards. Girls in Engineering, Math, and Science. This is also an annual workshop that we've had several teachers go to, especially in the areas of math and science, really learning how to promote STEM-related, math and science-related careers to all genders, but specifically girls as well. Career readiness. This was the middle school camp flyer that went out. I didn't talk about this. I was going to talk to you about this in some detail, but this came with a lot of collaboration. We had a focus group of 8th grade students. We applied for a grant. It was a very small grant, but we wanted it to be career related around this STEM initiative. And so for a few years now, I think we're in we would have been in year 4. We have been able to have students apply, interview, and then be picked as a career camp member at the middle school level. So for 5 days, typically the week following the last week of we have career camp at the middle school where we have guest speakers come in, do interactive STEM related lessons. We have lunch, we do a counseling type of icebreaker activity, and then we use our grant funding to then load up on buses and go on other field trip opportunities. We would do that actually for 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We would follow that type of format. On the 5th day, we would do a service learning project. One year we painted bleachers in the community park. Another year we cleaned up trash. Another year we weeded and planted new flowers in the entrance park of Freeport. And at the end, if they came to camp on time, participated, interacted appropriately, displayed pro-social behaviors, all the key aspects that we said we wanted to address, as well as completed the service learning project from start to finish. We used the grant to give each student who participated fully a $100 stipend at the end. They received a paycheck for their efforts. So it was very well received. We had a lot of community members come in and do the interactive lessons during the day. And we also had a lot of parents who work in the community volunteer to host our campers in places of employment in the afternoon. We also visited IUP once, as well as my connection at Carnegie Mellon. And again, to be able to see these students for the first time enter a college campus was really quite awesome to be able to see. So that was a project from start to finish using service learning as the motivator, but the steps that we had to take to be able to get that approved, it caused us to do a lot of work and pre-planning and collaboration beforehand, as well as, having to sell this opportunity to administration and school board members, but being able to offer the product, the end result of the efforts is what keeps us coming back and applying for that same grant each year. Ever have if you find yourself in a place someday very soon upon graduation and you want to collaborate and have some ideas, you can find your fellow counselor at Freeport, and I can help you in all of the starting stages of these processes because it's overwhelming. This takes time. As I said, this is year 13 for me, and we still have so much to go. This is what I wanted to share. Keeps coming up here. I wanted to share this, and then I can be done. Share multiple windows. I never saw that option before. All right, so this is how we really initiated our movement into the STEM approach, the Teacher in the Workplace program. So over the summer, we had a pilot team volunteer when we gave them a bit of information on what this initiative was going to be about. And we had representatives from 6 through 12 in different areas of instruction. We had 10 teachers, I believe. Can't remember exactly, agreed to be a part of this initiative. And so the program was Teacher in the Workplace. The goals of the experience were spelled out and communicated clearly. We really wanted, as a counseling department with administration, really wanted to create that link between classroom learning and real world living. We all very much hold strongly to our delivery of what it is that we feel students need. But that collaboration was missing and really at the heart of STEM learning. So gaining perspective of workforce development, K through 12, and then having teachers document their personal learning and having them share out the ways in which they were going to modify their approach to students starting in the fall. They, of course, got paid. It was through a grant, so some of this is not beneficial. But this was something that I think really hit home to the teachers that thought, especially those teachers that taught advanced placement courses. I think that this really hit home. So this came from Paths to Purpose and talked about the breakdown of students within the public classroom setting, the different titles that they're given, but the percentages are what really kind of threw them. So really 20, if you want to consider that additional 30% of students are engaged and they find meaning and interest with a clear sense of purpose of the future when they're sitting in a classroom setting. Whereas the other 50% are classified as the disengaged. So they're sitting there before you as a teacher with neither a purpose in life nor an inclination to find one. They just are there because they have to be. This is where their parents make them go every day, and they're just waiting to go back home to just start it again the next day. And then the dreamers they're also an area of concern because they're imagining these big, great things, the mindset of I can do anything, but not taking any intrinsic practical steps of pursuing their goals or their dreams in mind. And so we had a conversation around this particular slide for quite some time. It got the conversation started around the common goal that we were all feeling but didn't have words to. Okay, I just missed those initial slides. I thought I pulled up the right thing. This was our permission slip for the 8th grade trip. And so again, start to finish, I do have folders for each of these initiatives. If you find yourself looking to do any of these projects, let's collaborate. Does anybody have any additional questions for me? I know I'm talking so much about my 2 main topics here, but I just wanted to show you some of these things in action. Because it's easy to kind of conceptualize theory, but when it comes to putting things into practice, as I said, and we've pointed out in discussion, it takes so much planning, collaboration, and execution, as well as follow-up and accountability. This is one other thing. Can I show you one more thing? This is ABC Create. This is something that we are so proud to be a part of.
But you know what?
What?
It's not share the screen.
Okay. Well, this is not the part that I wanted to share. I will share the good part. I promise. This is not maybe as exciting to you, but it is to me. So this was a work in progress initiative. Let me get back to my email. It's a website, ABC Create. Let's go to this one. All right. So this has been a continued work in progress, but this is our STEM hub that we're a part of. We kind of moseyed our way in because we're not really Westmoreland County, but we are Butler and Armstrong, but the heart of this started in Westmoreland County. So these are the school districts that are involved in this initiative. And this is a hub where, are you guys all familiar with like Teachers Pay Teachers? And you can use resources. The teachers in here are like, yeah, for sure. So this really spells out by grade level, by the types of resources that you might have in mind that you want to incorporate within your classroom, the skill level. So maybe you have early childhood, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. So as Jess was bringing up before, so maybe you're a high school level student, but the readiness of your learners for STEM related is a little lower than where they are, their chronological age. You could select a skill level beneath where they are age-wise. I wanted to show you. So say I am the the engineering and design teacher in 8th grade. I really wanted to incorporate my robotics lesson, this B-bot activity. Well, this is a K through 2. Let me do this.
So this is very similar to DIY.
Yes.
It's nice.
It is nice. And it's really made, where do we start? Because that's often what teachers ask. It's not that they don't have an interest or desire to incorporate these things, but the planning behind is so overwhelming. And so this ABC Create is a consortium that also offers professional development throughout the year. Teachers can go and be trained at any time. Training opportunities exist. Our district administration is very encouraging. If you have an interest, they will send you to go, whether the training is free or not. They typically are very, very low cost if there is one. And then when you're part of this group, then the activity becomes yours. So it's through Google Calendar. You can essentially decide when it is that you want to incorporate this lesson and reserve the materials. What grades? It just asks for a few information through a Google Doc, through a Google survey. And If it's available, which it should be if you're clicking on the calendar, it's yours. So this took a lot of collaboration, but it's an amazing entity to be a part of.
Are you finding school districts are more receptive now?
Yes.
Than they used to be?
Yes, I found it interesting, and it actually helped me to make the connection. Even though I live this, the book talks about like we're in present day Sputnik. Like we need to be competitive. We need to have our homegrown scientists that we're engaging in these learning experiences now, so they know what they're capable of and what they're motivated by, so that they do continue down that path, and we're able to advance with it. So these are the steps that creative administrative teams are taking, so that we're not, we're preaching about not functioning in silos, then we as districts and learning communities need to do the same. So there's no point in hiding the resources. Why not share? When there's more to share, there's more to gain. So I feel like this trend is really picking up, and I think it's going to be the way of the future as well. And it really helps for students too when we go on trips. Sometimes the learning is happening within these hosted districts. They're learning to interact with other students, other backgrounds, other abilities. I never had an opportunity like that as a school-aged student, and I think it's really quite awesome for them to start having that real-world interactive experience at a much younger age level than maybe we did as students. I don't want to read my emails, huh?
Good job.
Thanks. It's so much, and I tried to make it so it's not so much, but the truth of the matter is it is. It's a lot. But it's not going anywhere, and it really shouldn't either.
All right. So that was a great focus. I'm going to post all of that. I'm going to stop recording.